What's up, friends? Can you hear me? Tell me if you can hear this, please. Well, dang. I kind of thought stuff was set decently, but it's not. Stupid. I wonder why. I feel like it should be. Oh. Yeah, mute to stream. That's dumb. Can you guys hear the music? You can hear the music? That's weird. Okay, what about now? Check, 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 check. Check, 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 check. Weird. Well, everything's broken then. That's fine. It doesn't matter. Just... If I cough in the mic, I'm sorry. That's all. That's all that's going on. Well, you might as well just look at me then. Hey. Hey, everybody. What's going on? Guys, I went to get a Slurpee today because it's free Slurpee day. Did you know that? 7-Eleven, baby. We got free Slurpees. That's what I'm talking about. Yay, yay. Well, apparently I can't mute things or anything, but we're going to do a chair stream for like 2 seconds because I got to get some coffee. Then we're going to go. So if you would you please put any questions, anything you want to talk about in the chat, and I'll do my best to get to it. These streams are generally a little bit scattered because, you know, we got a lot of things to talk about and everything, but I'll do my best to help you out, okay? BRB. Oh, finally he's gone. Listen, I don't know what to tell you guys, but our boy's got problems. Okay, so be gentle. He's sensitive today. Sorry about Dan. Sorry about him. Does DaVinci Resolve 20 update not let paid iPad subscribers change retime control curve? I have no idea. I don't know about that. That's crazy. How to make anything gradient glow effect in Fusion. Anything gradient glow effect. What does that mean? You mean like glowing where it's like glowing more on the top and it kind of fades out on the bottom or something? Is that what you mean? My media files do not fully load. They show up in the media area, but they are blank squares with no sound, no video. I've uninstalled and reinstalled DaVinci 3 times. No luck. Any advice? Is it media that's supported by Resolve? Are you using the free version and trying to use like H.265 or something? That's my first guess. The other guess would be, have you updated your video drivers? That's my guess. How do I know when to use the edit page and when it's better to use Fusion? That is a great question. That's a great question. It depends on what you're doing. Generally, things that have to do with timing and things where you're just putting something over something else works best in the edit page. It's easy. When it gets to the point where you're stacking 3 or 4 things up in the edit page, I would consider thinking about moving to Fusion. It kind of depends on what it is. If you're adjusting like pieces of the image, Fusion tends to be better for that. If you're just like putting one shot on top of another and like cropping it, maybe you'd probably stay in the edit page. It's hard to know without specifics, but something like that. From your POV, has the debate between After Effects and Adobe Fusion tab of DaVinci Resolve ended after version 20 of DaVinci? No, it's never going to end. It's like Fords and Chevys. Everybody's going to have their preferences, and they're both good. They're both good. I mean, in my opinion, I think Fusion is better for Resolve editors because it's integrated in Resolve. And Fusion's color management, along with Resolve's color management, is just so good. It's so good. People that do a lot of motion graphics and animation and stuff probably prefer After Effects because the keyframes and everything are a little bit easier to work with. It also has a lot of plugins and scripts and everything that people have made, which makes it really convenient. And especially if your workflow is based on that, it'd be really hard to switch out of After Effects to Fusion. And that's okay. If you're brand new and you aren't reliant on After Effects right now, I would try and learn Fusion. You know, just because if you're editing with Resolve, if you're editing in Premiere, it's probably, I mean, there's no reason to go to Fusion, I would say, over After Effects necessarily. There's some reasons. If you're doing a lot of visual effects and you're doing a lot of compositing, I would say Fusion is better compositor for visual effects overall than After Effects. But it is a different paradigm. It's a different way of thinking about things. You have to think about things in nodes, right? Which can be challenging for a lot of people because it's not really like anything else. It's not like stacking pieces of paper, you know, like layers are. It's not really like Photoshop. People who are either into coding or into guitar pedals really like Fusion right off the bat because they're like, oh, it's the thing I know. Minimum system requirement for DaVinci's Fusion. It's listed. If you Google it or ChatGPT it, it should tell you. Basically, you want like a mid-range gaming PC in general or a newer Mac, like a M2 or later. How do I know? Let's see, I already did that one. Can you make a tutorial on map editing complete like army type? I don't know what that means. How to make things appear and disappear in Fusion. I've tried using the global in out and it works for the in but ignores the out. A me problem. It shouldn't ignore the out. What I generally do is keyframe the blend on a merge node. If you guys want me to show you exactly how to do that, I can do that. What's the minimum? Okay. Not related to Fusion, but I just delete render cache for several projects, but then whenever I open up the app, it takes 30 seconds to load, not smooth like before. How can I fix this? I don't know why it's doing that. I would update your video drivers, restart. How do you add Starfield effect behind Text Plus? You should ask Patrick Sterling. That guy's really good at that. I mean, if you're talking about just like stars coming in, you can use particles. You can also use like a high contrast, low scale noise. And you can kind of make that look like stars. I edit my rugby games in Resolve and made my own scoreboard with the timer in Fusion. Still learning, but I love Fusion. Want to learn Fusion more. That's awesome, Chris. I love that. That's amazing. Recommend some great plugins. The number one plugin I would recommend time and time again is Neat Video Reduce Noise. That's the main one I use. Like, I don't really even use any other plugins. Those are the big ones. That's the big one, I would say. I use that all the time. Red Giant's got some cool stuff now, actually. Some cool lens flares and stuff that I really like. And then there's a lot of motion graphics and stuff too. Like Motion VFX has some good stuff. Jake Witt, Patrick Sterling, Alex's plugins are amazing. Magic Animate, Magic Zoom for editing. Those are really good. Highly recommend those, especially since there's free versions. Which is glow effect is the best plugin or default? There's a thing with Reactor called exponential glow, which is really nice. You can get the same thing by stacking a bunch of glow effects at different radiuses. That's the way. Nodes are not really creative. Interesting. That's a hot take. Find ChatGPT very helpful for learning DaVinci, but yesterday I struggled to find an explanation for why my Fusion painting of a flag only lasted 1 frame. Like literally with the paint node? Is that what you're talking about? Can I make a map animation in Fusion like After Effects geometry layer? I mean, you can make map animations in Fusion, yeah, and it's a very similar process, I would say, to After Effects. You're like Andrew Kramer of DaVinci Resolve, as your way of explaining makes it easy to understand the application, get rid of the fear of nodes. Thank you. That is a huge compliment. Thank you. That's who I learned a lot of stuff from, is Andrew Kramer. That dude is, I would love to sit down and hang out with that guy someday. Proto Glow and Scrape macro. Yeah, those are great. Resolve and Blender is all we need to do production on a high level. Is that a question? Resolve and Blender is all we need to do production at high level? Depends on what kind of production you want to do. I would say, yeah, you could probably do most of what you would want to do with those. I mean, assuming you have a camera, you know. But as far as editing and stuff goes, yeah, I mean, it'd be really hard to find something you can't do in either of those programs. Yeah, other than like maybe creating really great vectors, stuff like that. I mean, you can do that in Fusion now too, but it's less intuitive, I would say. Is there a way to make someone in the frame completely blacked out silhouette and then make that silhouette red, if that makes sense? Yeah, I mean, you could do that with like a magic mask and then apply that to like a red background or something, a black background. He single-handedly guided us, the whole of us, into DaVinci and guided us right from basic to expert levels. That's really cool. Thank you. It's not single-handedly, because I could not make nearly the quality or goodness that is made without Dan and Sam and Andy and everybody. It's really, they do all the hard work. I just take the credit. What is the best project structure for practicing Fusion from beginner to pro level? Should I focus on motion graphics or VFX first? That is a great question. If I were starting Fusion today, if this is my first day, what I would recommend is looking at the toast video that I have and understanding what the nodes do. Because if you understand what the nodes do, you can do anything. That's really the dirty secret, is like, if you really understand how nodes work, you don't need a lot of other stuff. You just need some experience with how those nodes work. And I guess I would say you need to understand the concepts of compositing as well, because there is, you have to understand that, like, that you're layering things, that you cut things out with masks, that you can color correct things to match, and that you can always mold and change things. And then it's just a matter of seeing the tools that are available for that. At the beginning, I would do a little bit of both. I would try and animate some text. I would follow probably some of the like the motion graphics tutorials. We have a motion graphics mini course that would be good. That we have a Fusion Essentials for Editors course that is a really great starting point. That's pretty much like, if you're working with Resolve but you're kind of scared of Fusion, that's like the perfect place to go, because it just helps you get used to some of the basic concepts. Yeah. Daniel has a great DaVinci Resolve for Noobs series that answers a lot of common newbie questions. Yeah, that guy's great. If you're doing motion graphics on top of an S-Log video, do you change the colors to DaVinci Intermediate at the end of the node structure? You convert it to Rec 709. Well, if you're color managing in nodes, ideally what you would do would be convert everything into DaVinci Wide Gamut Intermediate Linear. Or I guess not intermediate. It'd be DaVinci Wide Gamut Linear. And then convert everything to Rec 709 at the end with CST. However, these days, I would just do the project color management, which we can go over if you guys want to. If you want me to go over specific stuff, put it in all caps and say, please go over whatever you say. And then I'll know, because if you just say yes after a whole bunch of things in the chat, I don't know what yes means, okay? So give me some context if you respond. Suggestion for future collabs. It'd be really cool instructional to have two people recreate the same effect with all in Fusion, all in the edit page. Yeah, that's a great idea. Too many nodes, also too many options. How do we need and remember all the settings? The short answer is you don't need to remember all the settings. There are only 4 nodes. If you guys want me to go over that, we can talk about that right now. If you want to, tell me, all caps, please go over 4 nodes. I've tried Fusion. Nodes aren't for me. DaVinci is good when it comes to performance. Adobe apps suck at that. Yeah, that's rough. I'm sorry that it feels like nodes aren't for you. I am a firm believer that I bet you would like them if you just saw the light. But, you know, that's why we have all these different kinds of software and everything, is not everybody thinks the same way. You know what I mean? Can you tell me about plugins and templates that, like in Premiere Pro, as work depends on readily available templates? There aren't as many for Resolve, and that's changing slowly. But there aren't as many. There are some people making some really great stuff. I'd highly recommend Mr. Alex Tech's stuff. That's, I think, the most useful stuff for editors these days, like Magic Animate especially. Dude. What's your most tasty tricks creating cinematic perspective using during only editing part or editing stage? Your most tasty tricks creating cinematic perspective. You'd have to define what that means. Say cinematic perspective : and then what you're talking about. Do you think DaVinci's presets look professional, or do I have to learn to do them by myself? They look as professional as any template, I would say. A lot of the ones that come with Resolve are very generic looking. What I mean by that is they look default to me, at least. And maybe just because I've seen them a lot, but they don't look designed. they're just functional, you know? Whereas if you get like a template, you buy a template for $100 or whatever for a pack, those tend to look more designed, which tends to look more professional. Because if you just put in the default template, everybody's seen that. Everybody kind of knows. And I don't know, like, if you show it to people who aren't into video production, they probably won't notice and it'd probably be fine. But to me, I just can't get over that, you know? I'm working with layered EXRs in Blender, had to re-render the first 300 frames separately and now want to merge them with the rest. Since I'm using layers, I had to duplicate the whole comp. Now I want to merge them. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're asking there. What's the best audio plugin for Resolve 20? Ask Sam. I don't know. He has a lot of things like that. If Sam's in here, he can comment on that. Can't wait till ResolveCon. Me too. How do you achieve smooth and professional looking kinetic topography animations in Fusion without relying on presets? A lot of work. a lot of animating curves and things like that. It's just like you would do in After Effects. Although they do have more plugins for After Effects that are good at that. I want to say thank you for teaching me Resolve, how nodes works, color page. I've learned a lot from you. I want to ask now, what should I do? I will be very thankful. I want to thank you how nodes work. What should I do now? What do you mean gaming with Sam? What do you want to do next? Like, what's your goals? Tell me. Goals, whatever you want. Can there be a series of high-level motion graphics tutorials, sports show, open layered, sorry, noted, motion graphic product ads to stop the After Effects is better at motion graphics trope? Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Frankly, I can't be the only one making them, guys. So you guys make them too. All right? Because it takes a lot of work to make those things. Honestly, like if you see something that's made that looks amazing from After Effects, it's because somebody spent like 2 weeks on it. It's because there's tons of work that go into these things. And so it's really hard to even teach a tutorial on that because it's also that much work in Fusion. But there's less scripts and things like that are made for that. And like I said, that's slowly changing. But yeah. Okay, please go over 4 nodes. Okay, we will do that. Just a second. What's the easiest way to track something on a fast-moving screen, for instance, in a video game when the focus changes from an object? I know in Premiere Pro there's a lasso tool to track. I mean, it's the same thing. You would have to probably track it with a point tracker, and if it doesn't track, you'd have to manually move it. That's especially if there's motion blur and stuff, it's hard. People try to overthink node structure. Once you know the basics, everything starts making sense. Just start with basic stuff. It's actually far easier than people think. I totally agree. It's just intimidating, right? Best practice for setting up templates for social various media platforms, working on the IG reel, quickly adapting that video to other platforms with safe zones in mind. Ooh, yes. That is quite a big topic that we'd have to go over like in a tutorial or something. I believe Alex is working on something with that though. Will you make a tutorial of DaVinci to Blender and back with green screen and 3D camera track? And if you already did, please tell me what it's called. I don't have something like that. That would be fun. I'd love to do more Blender stuff, but not everybody likes Blender. And so it's hard to prioritize that, guys. Like, because of the people that love Resolve, there's a small amount that love Fusion, and there's a smaller amount that are into Blender also. And so it's hard to it's hard to prioritize that over other videos. When should I use polygon mask versus bitmap mask and B-spline in professional motion graphics videos? Long story short, don't use bitmap mask. I haven't came across a situation where I need to use that. Very rarely do I use B-spline. Pretty much always use polygon. If you want a quick answer, that's the quick answer. Okay. All right. I'm going to have to kind of skip through a couple here if we want to actually talk about the 4 nodes thing. Maybe Dan, if you want to go through and see if there's any questions that would be really good to hit on, that would be very helpful for me. And then maybe you can bring it up here in a few minutes. That would be good. But before that, let's talk about nodes, guys. Let's talk about nodes. So I was saying earlier that there are only 4 nodes. There's only 4 kinds of nodes, is what I mean. So I want you to take a second here and understand this. There's basically 4 kinds of nodes. Let's start with one of them. This is an image node. So connecting a background to this media out, this background node, this generates an image, okay? Technically speaking, every node generates an image, or it makes an image in some way, but this is a starting point, okay? So there are image nodes, which are always the starting point, the raw ingredient for what you're doing, okay? So a background is a raw ingredient because you don't have to put anything into it. It's a starting point. So I can start with a red background, right? Or a blue background, because I can just generate that from nothing, okay? Ex nihilo, like the Lord, all right? I can just make that happen, background, okay? Same thing for text, okay? Even though text is different, I can generate text from nothing, okay? So that is also an image generator. Same thing for fast noise. It generates clouds, okay? Makes an image from nothing, all right? Those are image nodes. Now, similarly, it's not quite making it from nothing, but in a similar way, you can grab a piece of media and bring it in, and it makes an image, all right? It doesn't need anything. You don't need to plug anything into it. You don't need to run anything through it. It doesn't modify a current image or anything. It's a starting point. So all of these are images. Okay, starting points. So this is the first kind of node. Let's see, underlay. Okay, so these are images. So that's the first kind of node. The second kind of node, that's probably easiest to understand next, would be a effect. All right. So I have this text, and I need to affect the text with this blur. An effect, you always run an image through an effect. All right. So if you're coming from After Effects or even from the edit page, you might think of putting an effect on something. You know, if we have an image here, right? And I go, I want to blur this. I go to effects and find a blur, and I drop the blur onto this like that. I apply the blur to it, right? So that's how we think of effects sometimes. In Resolve or in Fusion, it's helpful to say it a different way. It's helpful to say this in, you run an image through an effect. Okay. If you want to clean your car, you run a car through a car wash. Okay. So this text, if I want this blurry, I run it through the blur. Okay. And so that's how we blur text. We don't put a blur on top of it. Okay. So this is the second kind of node, which is an effect. Now we're looking for nodes that also act this way. So for instance, a color curves would act the same way. We put an image through it and it affects that image. Okay. And again, when I say images, it can mean a literal image or it can mean an image that's generated in Fusion. All right. Color corrector. I put this background through a color corrector. Instead of blue, I can make it a different color, right? Cool. I'm putting that image through this effect. So this happens with blurs, with color, with brightness and contrast, even with something like a transform. So if I have this image and I have a transform node, we're running an image through it and it changes that image, changes how it looks. So that is an effect. So we have two different kinds of nodes so far. We have images and we have effects. All right. So effects, you always run an image through an effect. And something that's interesting is an effect can't live by itself. If I try and view this transform, nothing comes up. If I view this color curves, nothing comes up. Blur, nothing. Color corrector, nothing. It only works if I plug an image into it, then I can see what's going on. All right. Then I can see stuff that's blurry. That works. Okay. But without it, it doesn't exist. It's dependent on an image. That's an effect. Okay. So image can live by itself. Effects are dependent on an image. The third kind of node would be a merge node or something like a merge node. It's a node that puts an image over another image. Okay. So when we have a merge node, there's two inputs here. There's a yellow input and a green input. The yellow input is a background. The green input is the foreground. So the foreground is always on top of or visible in front of the background. Okay. So if I have a media in, I can plug this into the background of the merge. And it sort of works like an effect in that if there's no image plugged into it, nothing exists. So you have to plug in a background. Okay. But it's special in that what this does is it puts an image over another image. That's how we get text over a background. Right? So this merge is a really unique kind of node in that what it does is it puts images over images. Now, something that people get really confused about is, when do I use a merge if I just want to like blur this image? Why don't I put a blur over this merge? Like, why don't I plug the blur into the merge? Because I'm used to putting a blur on something. If I want to put an effect on something, why don't I put it in the merge? It's because the merge only deals with images. It puts images over images, and the way to apply an effect to something is to run the image through the effect. So images go through effects, and images go over images on with a merge. Okay? So things that are like merges. We have a merge. We have a multi-merge. We have things like a tracker, which will put images over other images. It also affects things, but those kind of things are merges. Okay. So underlay. Okay. So we have merges. That's the third kind of node. So these put images over other images. Okay. Then we have the fourth kind of node, the other major kind of node, which is a mask. So a mask. So like a polygon mask or a ellipse or a rectangle or a B-spline or a multi-poly. Those are all masks. And what a mask does, it's sort of like an image actually, in that you can create something from nothing and it doesn't need an image. So I can draw a polygon and it generates it from nothing. But the intention with these masks is to mask a node. What that means is selecting where a node does its job. Really, every node in Fusion has one major job that it does. So this media in, its major job is to bring this image in from the media pool, put it into Fusion and draw it on the screen. Okay. What we can do is we can apply a mask to it by connecting this to the blue input, and it's going to limit where this node does its job. So it's only going to draw that image inside of that mask. So we're controlling where that node does its job. This also works for things like effects. So for instance, if we had this image here that we're running through an effect for this color curves, and we're just darkening this down, let's say, we can apply this polygon mask and have that color curves only do its job within that mask. Okay. So the intention of a mask is for you to connect it to a node and limit where on screen it does its job. Okay. This also works for merges. Remember, a merge's job is to put a foreground over a background, a foreground image over a background image. So for instance, if we took this media in, we ran this into the merge in the background. And then we had this text, wherever I put my text. Did I get rid of my text? Well, heck. Okay. I can put the text over the background like this, but I can use my polygon mask to control where that happens. So as I move this around, it's only going to put that foreground over the background within that mask. Okay. So that's why we use those masks. Now, there are 370 something nodes, at least, probably a lot more now, nodes inside of Fusion. But for the most part, there are some outlier nodes, but for the most part, they're going to fit into one of these categories, which I think is really nice because we don't have to be super complicated and learn everything in the whole world about every single node. What we really need is to learn how each of these 4 kind of categories of nodes works. All right. These are the 4 categories. Like, you can kind of think about just about any node and it would go into one of these. Even the 3D nodes and the particle nodes and everything, even though it's in 3D space, they're generally there's generally some kind of version of this, right? So for instance, an image plane or a shape is really kind of like an image in that it generates a 3D shape. Same thing with 3D text. A merge 3D, guess what? It's kind of like a merge. Something like a transform 3D is kind of like an effect, right? A renderer 3D is, that's sort of like a media out kind of thing for the 3D space. There are not really, there's sort of masks, but you can kind of do masking type things with these too. Same thing with particles, right? We have particle emitter, which generates something out of nothing. We have a render, which is like a media out sort of. Then we have particle merge, that kind of stuff. Shape system. There are like shape rectangle. That's basically, it's sort of like an image in that it generates things. We have S Boolean, which is sort of like a mask, sort of like a merge, sort of like a mask kind of thing. We have S merge. We have S transform and S all kinds of things, S duplicate, all kinds of things. Those would be effects. And so really they're the same things. It's the same concept. It's just kind of in a different place. So there you go. There's really 4 kinds of nodes, and understanding this is the basis to really understanding how Fusion works, because once you really get your head around it, then you can sort of guess how to hook things up and how to use certain nodes. And you might not get it totally right, but you'll at least like not be totally lost. Okay. Okay. Some questions. Am I the only one having issues with Magic Mask in 20? As soon as you add additional add or subtracts, it seems to lose its mind, refuses to track, and skips and starts to the end and timeline of the clip. No, you're not the only person. That happens to me all the time. It's very frustrating. How can I create procedural motion graphics like text that reacts to music or user inputs inside of Fusion? Are there any pro tips to make planar tracking more accurate in scenes with lots of blur or motion? Okay, so there are ways to do that. There is a reactor plugin for Fusion called Suck Less Audio, I believe is what it's called, where you can map the input of a sound of an audio file to basically control a slider, and then you can connect that slider through modifiers or effects to things. It's not super intuitive. You do have to understand how Fusion works a little bit to really get that working. It's admittedly not real great as far as a solution to that, but you can do that. You can do user inputs as far as like a template, or sliders or macros and that kind of thing. That's like making macros, which there are quite a few videos on. There's one that Alex has that's really great. I think Patrick has a couple. Pro tips to make planar tracking more accurate in scenes with lots of blur or motion. Try it a bunch with different settings is the short answer. It really depends on the situation. But the long story short with tracking is you try it a bunch. You try it one way, you track several different parts to see which one works better. You use planar tracking, you do it with perspective, you do it with just scale rotation, that kind of thing. You try a point tracker and you usually just throw all of those at a video until one of them works. And I'd like to say that there is a nice clean way to decide which one to do. Usually what I do is I start with a planar tracker and see if that works because it's always the easiest. And if that doesn't quite work, then I try to take it off of perspective and see if it will just work with the transform. If that doesn't work, then I'll go to point tracker because it's just more work. And sometimes you can get that working better. But it's you start with the easy stuff and then just go harder from there because there's no reason to start with the hard stuff. I've been having trouble with my weak PC system. I've been thinking on upgrading. Do you have any recommendation for a minimum CPU GPU system for a light-ish editing, tracking, light color correction? Yeah, I would get like a the same kind of build you would get for like a mid-tier gaming rig. I would recommend basically forever get the best CPU you can afford because that's the hardest thing to upgrade. You basically have to get a new computer if you get a new CPU, essentially, right? And so get the best CPU that you can. I would recommend like an i7, AMD, I forget what their series is, Ryzen 9 or whatever they're called. Like the new, like it doesn't have to be the newest top one, but I would pick like one tier under it. That's what I would do if I were you. If you're really trying to do it on a budget, if you're just doing light color correction and tracking and stuff, I mean, maybe get a Mac. It kind of depends on what you're doing. Like even a MacBook Air these days, like with an M4 or a Mac Mini is pretty good. When you're doing like 3D and particles and like really heavy fusion stuff, it's gonna struggle. But if you're doing just like editing, especially like HD or even 4K, you're probably gonna be fine for quite a while. We need some math equations to use in Fusion. You didn't cover this area. Hey, Eric, thank you so much for the super chat. That's awesome. Appreciate that. Math equations for Fusion. I mean, generally it's like basic algebra stuff. Usually it's order of operations and dividing things. It's real basic stuff most of the time, unless you're doing something really specific. Things like vector math and stuff like that. But it's either that's like trigonometry stuff is when you're doing things like you want to have something aim at something else, you know, like that kind of, it's kind of next level stuff. Yeah. An i5, I mean, it's probably going to be, it might be fine. The only way to know is to try it out, really. For RAM, I would get a lot of RAM. I would get, and what I mean by that is 16 gigs or more. 32 gigs, ideally. More than that would be great. I mean, it's a lot. How to get ideas for animations? I don't know. I have a hard time with that too. How can I make the image visible only between frame 10 and frame 50 in Fusion? I'll show you real quick because that's come up a couple times. So let's say I have this media in here. Okay, so let's say I have this image and I want this to come up only, or actually let's just do, it's the same process. So let's say something, we want something to only be over this clip between frame 40 and frame 70. Here's how I would do that. At frame 40, I would go into this merge. And right here, this blend slider, this is the opacity of the foreground of a merge. Okay. We do have a motion graphics course that we updated not too recently, or pretty recently. Dementia, have you checked that out? Pro motion graphics in Fusion. That is the GOAT for motion graphics. I would 100% recommend that. Blend. This is the opacity of the foreground. So what you do is you animate this. So at frame 40, I want that to be at 1. At frame 39, I want it to be at 0. At frame 70, I want it to be at 1. At frame 71, I want that to be at 0. That's how you do it. Okay? There are other ways to do it. This is the best way. That's the easiest. Okay? You can also trim it in the keyframes panel. It sort of, there are problems with that. The problems being, if you have, especially if you're working with any kind of modifiers or expressions or anything, if you have something that is like trimmed like this and it's trying to access it, it can sometimes give you an error, which is frustrating. But you're technically setting like an in and an out for this image there. It's just that Fusion gets a little grumpy with that. And so in some circumstances that works really nicely. But I would really tend to keyframe it in the merge, just because you come out, there's almost no problems with that. It just works. Would a MacBook Pro M3 with 36 gigs be good for entry video? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I would say that's probably fine for entry level video editing. Yeah, as long as you're not doing like a bunch of 3D rendering and stuff. Can I edit photos on DaVinci Resolve? Yeah, totally. Yeah, in fact, Fusion's actually really great for that kind of thing, depending on what you're wanting to do. Yeah, but I've done that. In fact, a lot of the color, especially color, I mean, the color tools in Resolve are just second to none. And so sometimes, especially like fixing white balance and things like that, I find it's a lot easier in Resolve, probably just because I'm used to it though. I hope that at some point in the near future, Blackmagic Design adds an IDE into Fusion with syntax check and autocomplete. That'd be sick. On the topic of hardware, is there any specific ultra wide monitor that's everyone's go-to right now? No, I haven't checked it out. Go-to setting for easing with splines. I feel like I always suck at easing. The short answer is that if you want your splines to be flat if they're going to stop. If they're not going to stop, you want it to be smooth. Okay. So if you have, and I would also recommend you always do this in a transform separate. Okay. So a transform, because then you can turn it off or on, you can switch it, you can copy it, you can do all that stuff. Right. And so if I'm going to animate this, let's say from here, let's just keyframe that center to here, right? So that's not eased. But if we go to spline and go to our transform, I'm just going to show only selected tool. We have this spline here. And if it's going to stop, I would flatten this keyframe. So F for flatten. If it's going to be on screen and it's going to start, I would also flatten it. Okay. If it's starting off screen, it doesn't matter. If you don't see it when it begins, who cares? If this goes off screen, it doesn't need to be flattened. But this ensures that it actually kind of ramps up and then slows down, easing. Okay. That's the big thing there. If you have it where it's not going to stop or go the other way, which is technically stopping. If you just want it to like ease like this, then let's say like in the middle of this right here, if we want this to say, I don't know, go this way, then this keyframe right here, we don't want this to be flat because what it's going to do is it's going to go over here and stop and then go this way, unless we want it to do that, right? We don't want it to stop and then go that way. We want it to just kind of like curve, right? So this one, we would say S for smooth, right? And this is going to be almost right. It's almost going to be what we want, but it's not going to slow down here. It's just going to kind of average out that. Now, the reason why this is still jerky is actually because of this spline. This took me a long time. I was like not a lot younger than I am now when I realized this, that there's the splines here, which is kind of the speed, but then there's also the splines here, which is the path. And so the speed that it goes along that path is this pink spline down here, but the actual path that it uses is right here on screen. And so not only do I need to smooth the speed, but I also need to smooth the path. And so if I hit Shift S, there we go, then that's going to smooth out this path as well. All right, so I need all of these to be smooth, and then I get a nice curve like that. And I can't tell you how many rage quits I have had from trying to smooth out something that didn't have a smooth spline on screen also. Hopefully that really helps someone. Okay. Sir, how to become perfect in Fusion? I'll let you know. I will let you know. Whenever I plug text through a planar transform, let's say to create subtitles, but whenever there's no text written, the planar transform doesn't render and it freezes. What's happening? It's because it's not giving it an image, and it needs an image. It's an effect. So if you're not giving the planar transform an image, it doesn't know what to do with its hands, and it loses its mind. So it's stupid, but like it should just give it a blank image and be fine with it, but it doesn't. So, yeah. I have a Lenovo with 16 gigs RAM, 1 terabyte storage included with 3040 series. Will it be convenient to render 4K videos or reels? It would probably work. It'll probably work. You'll probably see it slowing down a little. That's my guess. Wouldn't it be easier if splines were smooth by default? Yes. There's a way to set it that sometimes works. They say, the developers have told me that you can set that. In my experience, I've set it and it doesn't work. And it's possible that I'm doing it wrong. Very possible. In fact, it's likely that I'm doing it wrong. However, the target remains. You guys remember that part of Independence Day? That's a good time. It's one of my favorite movies. Yeah, smooth pathing. Yeah, I didn't either. I mean, it was not long ago. It wasn't last month, but it wasn't, I don't think it was last year. It was somewhere in there. How could I make footage fly through a text vector logo? Footage fly through it. Do you mean fly through a logo and see footage through it? Is that what you mean? How to recreate any complex logo in Fusion. I've tried once and felt it was frustrating and tried to do it on Cavalry. And I felt it was so easy, even not knowing the software. Cavalry is pretty cool. I haven't dove into it a lot, but it definitely looks really cool. If you're into motion graphics, I would check that out. If you're like wanting to make some intense motion graphics, Cavalry's pretty neat. It's more Fusion. It's like, how do I describe it? It's like using a really pro tool that can do anything, but it's maybe not optimized to do exactly what you want. That's what it is. Like making motion graphics in Fusion at the moment. Like there aren't a lot of like little shortcuts and easy tricks. It can do anything, but a lot of it is more manual work, I would say, than having a really nice like suite in After Effects that does a lot of like the animation and stuff for you. It's that kind of thing. And Cavalry is basically a big version of that. How to add 2D shapes behind a moving object in the free version. Can you tell me now? Well, you don't have Magic Mask, which is going to be a problem for a lot of stuff. Depending on where the person is, you would have to rotoscope it. Do you know what I mean by rotoscoping? You would have to make an animated mask and animate it yourself. You can track it, which is helpful, but it's not going to be instant like Magic Mask is. We heard of Adobe in Resolve, but can you Blender in Resolve? Would love to see a headache video. I don't know what that means. How do you... I don't think I've done Adobe in Resolve. Unless you mean like a Photoshop file. How to composite a bunch of image passes in Fusion. So what's cool is that when you have image passes inside of something like an EXR file, you can access all the EXR file stuff now with this layer thing right here. You can get to that. You can also get to crypto mats a lot easier. But that's pretty much the way to do it. And then that's how you would access them, is just you could duplicate the media in or the loader or whatever, and then switch the layer. That's how you would get to it. There's also a plugin, a reactor plugin that will, if you bring it in as a loader, it will split them all up into separate loaders for you. Expression modifiers. We need you to explain it or include it somewhere, YouTube or a course. Yeah. I mean, in general, is that what you mean, Abbas? How to add 2D shapes behind a mute. Let's see. What's the best way to start learning the Fusion page if you've never used nodes before? The best way to start learning the Fusion page is to start with my my toast video, which is just the one that's featured on my channel. Start with that. That's the best starting point. If you want to get deeper after that, I would highly recommend you get our Fusion Essentials for Editors course, because that is a great intro that will give you some practical tips to actually start working with Fusion. If you guys want a link to that, let me know. I think it's like 30 or 40 bucks. It's very much worth it. But yeah, toast video, I would start with that if you haven't watched that. That's free. How do I have text with a video as its fill and try and fly through the video? Oh, okay. You mean like knockout text, basically? So like, this kind of thing where you have a video in the text like that, and then you fly through the text and it becomes the video. Is that what you mean? Say yes, the text or something. I'm new here in video edit. Can you give me super tips through your experience? The biggest tip I can give you if you're brand new to video editing is to edit a lot of videos. I know that sounds stupid, but shoot something with your phone or get some of we have a bunch of practice footage on our website. We have, subscribe to Artlist or something for like a month and get a bunch of video and put it into Resolve, put it into a timeline, and just start working with it. See if you can make it shorter or longer. See if you can create a movie trailer. See if you can make a music video. Literally do that. Do that. And then once you have an idea that you can't do, search for that. Ask ChatGPT, go on Google, go on YouTube, and try and figure that part out. And you keep doing that. If you do that, you spend an hour a day doing that, you will, I would be surprised if you cannot be good enough to even like get a job within 6 months. Like it's just gonna happen, because that's what you need, is that experience. How do I approach optimizing node tree render times? Is there a good way to determine which nodes are taking the most compute power? Is there an optimal node order? Boy. So that would be great if there were a way to really track that down. Generally, it's things that take AI or GPU power that slow it down. Things like magic mask, things like noise reduction, things like particles in 3D and that kind of thing. That's what slows it down for the most part. The other thing that'll slow it down is animated masks with keyframes, and also expressions will do that. So if you kind of minimize all of those things, or if you have to have that, you can do a saver and kind of render out essentially that node that's doing a lot of work, then that optimizes things in general. That's the best way to do it. As far as a node order, not really. The only thing I would say is if you have an intense node like a noise reduction node or something like that, or an AI node, that you would, one is bake that into like a saver or something, so you're rendering out that video or an image sequence, so you don't have to compute that every time. And then if you do noise reduction first, then you can kind of cache that node, or you can do a saver there, so you don't have to do that every frame, and then you can do everything after that. Or you could do it at the end and then turn it off until the end, until you're done basically, or view the node before it or something. I'm thinking of getting Studio. Is the small editing keyboard worth it? It would be if you're doing really quick turnaround things like news stories or daily vlogs or something like that, where you have a bunch of videos in your timeline and you're wanting to cut them down really quickly. That would probably be worth it, but you have to spend some time practicing it for it to be worth it. I personally, and nobody here really uses our speed editor, just because we don't really make that kind of video very often. I could see possibly using that for editing tutorials because of the scroll wheels, really nice. I could see that being a thing, but you really have to commit to it. You probably have to commit to it for like 2 weeks and really edit a bunch of videos with it. And then it's going to be worth it. But like until you, and it's just like using like a Wacom tablet, or, you know, like a tablet, right? You have to commit to it for a while and then it gets good. Same with the color surface. It's the same thing. At first it's really awkward and it probably is going to slow you down. So you have to get over that initial hump. Any tip to find expressions for DaVinci? There are quite a few. I think there's like a developer manual. There's also some, I believe that JRTV has a bunch of expression stuff, I think. I think Jake Whip might also. And you could probably ask ChatGPT these days and it would probably tell you some good expressions too. It might not be totally right, but it might give you some ideas. Motion blur for free. It's built in to Fusion. Okay. Don't ask ChatGPT. There's definitely you want to be careful with it and check it, because sometimes it'll just say that it's like a kid, right? Like I'll ask my kid like something and they'll be like, oh yeah, this, saying it like they know it, and they don't. They do not know, right? It's like, Dad, did you know that the fastest man ever to run can run 80 miles an hour? And I'm like, that's objectively not true. But it's being presented as fact. There's a 3D camera in After Effects, how 3D camera works in Fusion for 2D image planes. Check it out. It's easy. I don't know if it's easy, but it's simple. Okay. So you have 3D camera, you have image plane, you have merge 3D. You merge them together to be in the same world like this. And we have a camera and we have an image. If we want to plug an image into our image plane, we can grab, sure, let's grab this, I guess. Plug that into the image plane. And look at that. We have our image. We have our 3D camera. All right. And we can move this around in 3D space. We can rotate it. We can do all the things that you would be used to doing in After Effects as far as like a 3D layer. That happens here in Fusion. And then you run that through a render 3D like this. And now you can, we put like the merge on the left here. Okay, and then we can rotate this and everything, do all the things that you would do in 3D, right? Cool. And that's how you do it. I notice every time I use the fast noise effect on the water surface template on edit, it generates artifacts on my image. Is there a way to do the same effect in Fusion without any issue? The water surface template on edit. Sometimes that is from the colors being super white or sub black. Sometimes. If you're like cranking the contrast on that, sometimes that can be weird, add weirdness. Other than that, update video drivers, which is my answer most of the time. Yes, the fly through text, but instead of text vector logo. Yeah, I mean, it would work the same way. You would basically take a, let's see, you would take the logo. Let's just say this is a logo, right? Logo. All right. And you could just animate the size and position of this text. This is the one time I probably wouldn't, oops, you can see it. This is the one time you probably wouldn't do it with a transform node, because it's going to make the edges of the text blurry. And so you could do something like have your logo small like this and then have it size up, and we can make this like 3 or something, maybe even more. Oh boy. Okay. Where this kind of goes in like this. That's pretty much the idea. It's pretty much the idea. You would use it as a mask. Best render settings for YouTube. When exporting at 1080p. When you're exporting in 1080p, YouTube is going to crush your stuff. Basically, that's how it works. I would export in 4K. That would make a big difference. Scaling 1080p to 4K and exporting to YouTube will give you a better result on YouTube. It's stupid, but it will. Because it uses a different compressor last time I checked, and it will just compress it better on YouTube. It's all because of YouTube. It's not because of Resolve. It's just literally because it's a bigger file, it uses better compression. But what I do anymore is I select the H.265 preset, call it good. H.265, and then switch it to UHD. Scale it to UHD. That's the only thing I do. I'll show you. It's this. H.265, resolution, Ultra HD, render. That's the best. There, you could probably get it nominally better by adjusting some of this stuff. I doubt you'd notice it. I really doubt you'd notice it. The biggest thing is going to be H.265, which is noticeably better, and rendering it in UHD. The best timeline you ever had? The best timeline I ever had. I don't know. I don't know what that means. You mean like the most stuff in it? You're Dan lolling. I've noticed every time. Let's see. I did that one. In a recent project, I was trying to track multiple objects using IntelliTrack. Shut up, Dan. I was trying to track multiple objects using IntelliTrack and apply a color to them to highlight. I had some trouble doing this. An easy way to do that. I might do that in the edit or in the color page, actually. Guy in the garage. The color page tracker is stupid, ridiculously good. When working the fusion effect on the color corrected clip, will it affect the fusion effect also? Yes, it will. It will. How to solve? You have to, if you're doing a visual effect in Fusion, let's say, if you're doing a visual effect in Fusion, what you want to do is work color managed, which, by the way, we can talk about color management if you guys want. That's a very confusing thing that's actually really simple. So if you want to just skip a whole bunch of pain, we can talk about that. Let me know, all caps, color management, please. But anyway, basically you would work and do your VFX while looking at a color managed image, right? And so if I'm going to add a lightsaber thing here, I would do this in a color managed place so that I know what this looks like roughly when this is color graded, right? That's what I want to do. Because if I don't, and I'm working on like a log image, then I can guess what it's going to look like, but I'm not going to get it right. Okay, we'll do color management here in a second. When it comes to like text or something or graphics, it'd be good. It's usually good to do that as a separate thing. And so if I have graphics, take a fusion composition, which this is jacked up, but sure, let's put text, okay? Put that on a separate layer. Put that on like a fusion composition like this, and then your color for your clip doesn't affect this text. That's the best way to do it. You could also possibly like render a matte from Fusion to hold out your color. It's not that great to do it. Way to do it. How long ago was your render quality deep dive? It was a long time ago. It's probably outdated at this point. Probably. I think somebody else did one not too long ago that's probably better. Will it worth if I start freelance editing in 25 through 26? What does that mean? A template safe zone pack? I don't know of one. Patrick might have one. He seems like the guy to make that. Insane graphic effects making in Resolve. Fusion Brew, I think, is making some cool stuff. I I think that's who it is. Swalvy's got some good stuff too. Is that how you say his name? I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm a bad person and I don't know. Like, start making money. Will you start making money with that? Yeah. Yeah, you can still do that. What I would recommend if you're going to start freelance editing is that you get really good at working fast. Practice every day. Practice all the time. Practice every day. And get really good at cutting down footage, a lot of footage, because that's where people really need help. The whole making really advanced, awesome graphics and stuff is fun, but chances are if you're just starting, there are going to be people that are a lot better than you. It's going to be very hard for you to stand out in that kind of environment. And what people tend to need, in my experience, is to cut down a lot of footage and to get a story made. It's like, here's 3 hours of footage. Please make a story. Get good at that. Get good at that. Now, AI is going to start to make that less of a thing, but it's still going to be a thing for a while. In fact, you can use AI to help you kind of get it cut down a little bit, and then you make it actually look good, because it won't actually look good even with AI stuff. It's going to be 60% there. And if you can learn to do the other 40, then that's still going to be a thing for a while. Okay. Yes. Okay. Color management. Let's do it. Let's do it. How much of the Fairlight page do you know? If you know, explain it. I know enough to get by. I don't tend to really like it a lot. It's a great app, but I just am not into sound that much. Sam is. He's great. I'm trying to convince him to make a course or something. We might bring that to you guys here pretty quick. Spline curves. We talked about that earlier, actually. If you want to look at the VOD afterwards, I go through that a little bit. I always shoot in 4K, but set my timeline resolution to 1080, then change 4K to prior to rendering. Yes, I would totally do that. There's no reason not to do that. It doesn't hurt it at all. The only thing that would hurt is if you're changing your what's it called? Your size, like your aspect ratio. It possibly throw things off a little bit. Like with graphics and stuff, maybe, but it's usually fine, especially if it's the same aspect ratio. Best YouTube channels to learn about graphic effect making. I already answered that. What's the best thing to learn first as a beginner video editor? I would absolutely recommend getting footage and putting it in your timeline and making a good story. Do a vlog. Literally make a vlog. That will teach you so much. Get your phone and record what you do during the day. And at the end of the day, bring it into Resolve and make it into a story that's 2 minutes long. That will teach you more than just about anything. Do that. Okay. Okay. Color management. Let's talk about it. Do you guys want color management just in Fusion or color management in general? I mean, it's really more of a general thing anyway, so we should probably just do general. Yeah. Yes, Jason's channel is awesome for Fairlight. I would highly recommend. If I import JPEG, PNG, and Fusion, add a text node, and use the color picker to apply a certain color of the JPEG, it shows me a different color than the text. It's close, but not the same. Correct. Yep. It's because of color management. The short story is the short answer is you need to just be fine with that. I know how enraging it is, but that's how it works. Okay. Color management. We're going to start with the basics. I actually just did a course on this for our advanced students, which we don't have publicly available for sale now, but it will be at some point. Here's how it works. let's take off color management here for a second. Ooh, we have that off. Why does this look this way then? It's because the timeline settings are not the same. That's why. Okay. I was gonna say, what the heck? What the heck, man? All right. So, great big airplane view of this. When you shoot with a professional camera these days, odds are you're probably shooting in log. What that means is that your image looks gray and nasty and washed out. The reason for that is because you can get more dynamic range. Dynamic range is the range of brightnesses and also the amount of colors that you can record on your camera's sensor. Okay. So, if you were to record, let's find something with a little higher dynamic range if there is one. These are all pretty tamed. But let's say this one, okay? Bring this into color here. Bring this up a little bit. So for instance, if you were to shoot this in just Rec 709, it may look something more like this. Okay, let's just say it looks something kind of like this, where we have some really deep blacks over here. We have some deep blacks here, right here in the shadows. All these shadows are really black. We also have some bright parts. Okay, so we could possibly have a situation where we have bright white hair that's, actually, let me kind of adjust this a little bit here. Where we have his hair that's kind of too bright for the sensor, and then we have shadows that are too dark for the sensor. Okay, so what it's basically doing is there are ranges of brightnesses that it can't record. That's the nature of recording video. It can't. What our eyes can see, the camera can only record a small amount of that. So what we do in professional cameras is we record in a way that basically decontrasts the image to the point where there's information in the shadows and in the highlights. When you do that, it's just like if you had an image that looked like this and you were to take this contrast down and it looks kind of gray and nasty like that. That's essentially what the camera is doing. With the benefit being that we are combining all of this information in the shadows and the highlights in a signal, kind of compressing it down, putting it into a video file. We put the video file on our computer and we open it up in Resolve and we go, okay, this is all compressed. Now we have this information here and we can choose how to use this information. We still have information here in the shadows and everything. And so we can selectively decide how dark we want those shadows to be and how much we want those to be black, how much we want this white to be there. And we have a lot more control in post because of this, because of the way that we shot this, because we shot it in log. Okay. So basically it's, even though we're starting with an image that looks bad, the reason why we're doing that is because it gives us freedom to make it look even better than if we were to shoot it in a way that quote unquote looks good, but doesn't have those options. Okay. It's kind of like why you would want to shoot RAW. Okay. In that RAW lets you change the exposure and change the ISO and everything in post. It's sort of like that. It's more of a compressed version of that. All right. So that's why we shoot log and what the heck log is. When we talk about Rec 709, Rec 709 is the fancy name for an image that looks good on your screen. It's the type of color and contrast that your screen expects. So, when you view an image that looks good out of the box, if you were basically to look at any video, you're looking at it in Rec 709 generally, unless you're looking at a log video. If you were to look at an image on the internet it's essentially Rec 709. It's not exactly the same, but it's the same idea, is that it's optimized to look good on your screen. So there's kind of two modes. There's camera space, which is the way that a camera records this image in order to give you a lot of space later for color. And then there's screen space, which is Rec 709, which is basically what looks good on screen. So when we have log, what we need to do, we have one job here. One of our jobs is to make sure that this gray, nasty looking footage actually looks good on our screen. Okay, so this is all just homework for what I'm about to say. We have a problem when we have this log footage, in that we need this log footage to look good on our screen. Does that make sense so far? So what a lot of people do, and what we've probably done, I don't know, if you're more of an old school person, I say old school, you know, I don't know, if you've been doing this for 10 or 15 years or something. I know a lot of you are much more old school than that. Okay. But, so what you would do, what people tend to do sometimes is they'll look at an image like this and they'll say, okay, this needs more contrast because it's all gray. This needs more saturation because the colors aren't that bright. And so in order to make this look good on my screen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put more contrast in it. So you'll take the contrast slider and you'll push this contrast up. Okay. Or you'll take the curves. And so I've seen lots of tutorials for Photoshop and stuff. That's literally, if you have a histogram right here, which is a graph of the brightnesses of your image, what you can do is you can take this white point and put that here, right? And you can take the black point and put that here. And when you do that, you get an image that has good contrast. And I say good contrast. It has contrast where there are things that are white and are things that are black. Okay. The problem with that is that the darkest thing in your shot is not necessarily supposed to be black. Same with white. The brightest thing in your shot is not necessarily supposed to be white. You might be shooting something that doesn't have any white. You might be shooting something that doesn't have any black, right? And so what we need to do is instead consider where the white point and the black point are. So for instance, if something should be black, then yes, we should set it as black. So like back here, that could probably be black. And so I could take this down until on my scopes, this part right here, which is that dark part, is touching 0. So I can touch that, and that's going to make this black, and maybe that sets my black point right. Then I got to figure out, okay, what's the brightest part of the image? Maybe here, maybe right here, right? Okay. Should that be white? Probably not. It's his hair. So I can push this up and go, okay, maybe it's like 70, 80% white, something like that. Now, this looks better. I can also look at the colors here and go, okay, this bright orange, that should look bright. So I can take the saturation and I can push that up and I can make that look better. Okay. And so what I'm doing here is I'm making a bunch of choices based on what I think this image should look like. Okay. Which is one of our freedoms as people who can do color grading. Okay. So that's cool. And we can make this image look a lot better. So here's before and here's after, right? So this is better. The reality, the real life, honest to goodness story here is that you can totally do this and you can make images that look good. You can make images that look professional. You can do this with broadcast TV and put this color into and give them colors and they will accept the colors and it will be great and everything will be great. Okay. You can do this, but what we did just now, whether we know it or not, is put a whole lot of our opinion into this image. We basically said, okay, here's what I think this part should look like. Here's where I think this brightness should be. Here's how bright I think that orange should be. And what we're doing is we're looking at our image and deciding where we want everything to be. What we're really doing when we do that is we're taking this image that the camera decided, it basically took, let's say it's this orange, and it said this orange should actually look this orange on my log signal. And this black should look this black, should look like gray on my log signal. And it basically has decided where every single color and everything that it sees, it has put that at a certain place on our signal using math. Okay. And it's done that in this certain way that's really technical. It's using a certain math function. Okay. When it does that, it is kind of compressing this image for our log footage, right? When we look at this log footage and we did what we just did here, we're basically ignoring all of that math. And we're just looking at whatever we're doing whatever we want. And the thing about that is that the math that camera is using can be mathematically kind of reversed. And it can give us a good looking image that is technically much closer to reality than what we just did, than this, which is essentially guessing. Okay. If we want this image to look as close as possible to normal before we start putting some creativity into it, then really the best thing to do is to take the math that the camera is using and reverse it. Okay. Take that math that the camera used to make this kind of nasty footage and unnastify it using the opposite math. Okay. So that's what color management is. That's what color management is it's taking this log footage that a camera created, and it's taking all of that and it's converting it with math scientifically to look good on your screen. Okay. So why the heck does this matter? Why the heck did this matter? Well, we just spent a good amount of time, and because I've used color a lot and I've done this kind of thing a lot, I can make this look decent, within a few seconds, right? Trying to get this just right and make it look nice. I can do that. That maybe took 10, 15 seconds, right? Or I can go to color management, set color management, save, done. And then I only have to do that once, and all of my footage will look good. It won't necessarily look exactly how I want it, but it will look normal. It'll normalize the footage. It will make it look essentially how it looked when we shot it. Okay. So these are the colors and everything that we saw in the camera when we shot this. Now, how does it do that? How the heck does it know what to do? Well, it's because what we did was, for this footage, I told it in the edit page, I told it already before we started this, the input color space, which I don't know. Oh, that's because it's the timeline. The input color space, I told it was Blackmagic Design Film Gen 5. So this is the camera we shot with, essentially. I'm telling it, this is the camera that we shot it with. Please use that math. And so it's taking that math and reversing it, essentially, something like that. And it's making a good looking image from that. Okay. Does that make sense so far? Are there any questions? Color management questions. Scopes, real quickly. Scopes are a technical way to look at the actual values in your image. Okay. So if we were to go to a waveform, This is the simplest kind of scope, I would say. A waveform is the brightness of the pixels versus the horizontal position of the pixels. So a pixel that is in the middle and towards the top is going to be brighter and in the middle horizontally of our image. Something that's darker is going to be on the bottom. Okay, so basically white is here and black is here. This would be like middle gray. Okay, this stuff is on the left side of the screen, this stuff is on the right. Okay, so if we were to look at these scopes, we can tell just from the scopes, not even looking at the image, that there's something a little bit brighter towards the middle of the screen. There's a lot of gray, dark gray, lots of dark gray, and there's a lot of black kind of throughout. There's a little bit brighter stuff here on the left. And so as we look at this, we can tell, yeah, so there's something a little brighter here. There's a little brighter stuff here on the left. There's a lot of black right here, black, dark parts, right? And so that's kind of how you read a scope. That's a waveform. A parade is 3 waveforms, one for red, one for green, one for blue. And so you can not only tell how bright things are, but generally what color they are, because the brighter color means it's kind of tinted that way. So this is tinted really blue right here on the left, which is this part. Okay. That's pretty much how you do it. This little spike, red, green, blue, that has more blue than anything else, followed by green, followed by red. This makes a cyan, okay? That's where this is. Okay, that's a parade. We also have a vector scope, which is kind of the other major one, and that is hue versus saturation. So hue is the direction, saturation, or yeah, the direction, and saturation is how far away from the inside is it. It's basically a big color wheel. It plots all of your colors of your image on a color wheel. Okay, so this we can tell we have a lot of neutral stuff. We have some yellow, we have some red, we have a lot of blue, which we have a lot of neutral stuff, some red, some yellow, some blue. Make sense? There's more to talk about with scopes, but that's basically what you need to know. Okay, so you use scopes to figure out what the actual levels of things actually are, because your eyes can play tricks on you. If you look at an image long enough, you can kind of get used to what it looks like and forget that, you know, if you have something that is low contrast, I can even take this really blue. Right now it looks blue. Before too long, your eyes actually get used to it and it doesn't look as blue anymore. Like, it still looks blue to me. But like after a while, especially if it's like full screen, it doesn't look that blue anymore. You just kind of get used to it. But like, look at the difference here. Look how blue this is. Isn't that crazy? It's a big deal. But if we look at the scopes, we can say, look at how high this blue is. Look at all of these dark parts that are lifted for the blue. This part's lifted, this part's high. This image is tinted blue. Even though I can't tell with my eyes, after a minute or so, it's tinted blue. That's why you use scopes. I've seen many saturation guides and they will use color space HSL or HSV and fix it with a curve. What do you think about it? I don't know. I think going into other color spaces is probably like the last 10% of things, and you don't really need to do that for most people. It's the super color nerds that care about that. Yeah. Yeah. That said, a saturation curve is really nice. So like these curves down here is really great for grabbing certain colors and desaturating them, that kind of thing. So I could take that and like desaturate these reds a little bit. That's really nice. Also, like the color warper, you can kind of take certain, you can kind of mess with the hue and saturation of things, which I really like doing that. That's great for limiting your color palette and stuff. Okay. That menu only allows some specific color combination of color space and gamma curve. Is there a way to select them independently? Yes. Yes, there is actually. If you go to your settings, you go to color management, uncheck automatic. Yeah, right here where it says use separate color space and gamma, you can do that. And you can select that both here for the project as well as your input color space for your images. I want to shoot in a log profile for future-proof my footage, but I've been shooting straight out of camera because I don't know how to manage color yet. Is there an easy way to quickly correct it? So you have been shooting just Rec 709, or you have been shooting log. Which one, government? Hey, if we render those out in DaVinci Color Managed on, do we get to see the same color which we saw before rendering? You will see what you're seeing in your viewer right now unless you turn color management off. That's how it will look when you render it. Color managed versus LUT for log correction. Do you have any preference? If I have a log from Gerald undone for vlog that looks really good, is there a way to color manage with a LUT like that? There is a way to do it. I'm not saying anything about Gerald's LUTs. I have no idea how they're built. I haven't used them or anything like that. Okay. But when you're using LUTs, you need to make sure that those are designed for your color space. Okay. I'm not saying they are or aren't. I literally don't know. Okay. But anytime that you use a LUT, there is a certain input color space and an output color space that needs to be considered. Okay. So the input color space, it's essentially setting it for, and it depends on where you use your LUT in the workflow too. Generally, if you're going to use a LUT that's a transform LUT, so that is meant to be used instead of a CST, instead of color management, right? So if I have a LUT that is designed, like let's take this off here. If I have a LUT that's designed to take log footage and convert it to Rec 709, for instance, there can be like a LUT here, Blackmagic Design, Film Gen 5 to video. That's what this is a LUT that takes log footage, which is DaVinci, whatever this is called. Yeah, Blackmagic Wide Gamut Gen 4.5 Blackmagic, yeah, film, right? Your specific log and convert it to Rec 709. This would be a transform LUT to Rec 709 transform. This kind of thing, if you're applying it within, anytime, yeah, wherever it's applied needs to be at the end of whatever color you're doing. Okay, so you do all your color before this. Okay, so any color that you do happens before that. Okay, whatever you're doing. This is the very last thing in general. There are sometimes reasons to not do that. Pretty much unless you know exactly what you're doing and if you're asking about this, you probably don't, this doesn't apply to you. So yes, pretty much put this always at the end. Okay, because what you're doing is you're taking a big color space and you're making it smaller. It's sort of like you're scaling down an image, sort of like you're lowering the resolution. It's sort of like that, but for color fidelity. So you want that to be at the end, just like you wouldn't save an image, 100 by 100 and work on that and everything in Photoshop. You would work on the big image and then scale it down. It's the same thing. You work on all your color and then you scale the color down to Rec 709. Okay. So a LUT like that, and also a CST, same thing. If you have a CST, which is a color space transform, which is basically just color management within a node, that takes a certain input, which would be, in this case, this log footage and a certain output, which is often Rec 709. That would also go right here. You could switch this with the CST. Okay. There are other LUTs which are designed for other purposes, right? So for instance, there could be a LUT that is a Rec 709 transform with some style. That's what we used to make it ground control, actually, is it's a LUT that also does something like adds a contrast curve or something like that. But it's meant to be put on footage that looks like this. It's meant to put on log footage that's specifically for a specific camera. Okay. That would be a reasonable way to do that. So anytime that you use a LUT, and if it's somebody who makes LUTs and they're responsible, they should tell you exactly what it's for. So if you buy like a Sony LUT pack, all right, it should say, there should be some way to figure out, okay, you need to apply this to the footage that is shot in S-Log3 Cine, right? That's where it goes, because that's going to determine where you put this. Now, again, the practical reality side of things, you could put this here, and you could make it look good. It's just technically not as good. Okay. So it's not something that you should really sweat about a lot, because you can still make it work, but it's going to be higher quality if you do it this way. Okay. How do you know what settings to use when importing a LUT? The LUT manufacturer has to tell you. And if they don't, that's why you don't buy a pack of 900 LUTs from Envato or whatever, from, I don't know if that's from whoever. Okay. No shade on Envato. Whoever has, I shouldn't have said that even. You shouldn't buy just a pack of generic LUTs, because they likely are not considering these things. Or they might be Rec 709 LUTs, in which case, if they're a Rec 709 LUT, what you do is you have your color transform, or your, however you transform it, whether it's a CST or whether it's a LUT that transforms from your camera space to Rec 709, you put that there, and then you put your whatever LUT here, because you need to put it into Rec 709 because the LUT is designed for Rec 709. Whatever the LUT is designed for, that's where it goes. Okay. All right. So that's a lot of stuff. What other questions do we have about color management? Color grading, color correction, working with color space. How important is the right monitor that you're using? Every monitor calibrating differently. Yes, it's important. Scaled on the how high end of clients you might be working with, or your output. Okay. So if you're charging for color grading, I would make sure that you have a calibrated monitor of some kind. That's probably a good move. It's less important nowadays because all the monitors are better than they were. It was a big deal a few years ago. It's less of a big deal now, especially if you have like a MacBook or something like that just has fantastic screen, you know, or if you can look at it on an iPad. That's what most people are looking at it on anyway. And so you could probably get away with that just fine. That said, if you're going to be super into color, I would get a color probe of some kind to calibrate your monitor. My monitor that I work with is calibrated to Rec 709. So I would recommend doing that. That said, you can sort of sidestep that by looking at it on a bunch of monitors. And you can kind of get used to how your monitor looks compared to other things. It's fine to do that. It's just, I wouldn't do that if you were like charging professional colorist rates. If you're just making your own stuff, see how it looks, put it on YouTube, look at it on a bunch of monitors and see how you like it. Did you cover color management in Fusion? Not really. We've kind of been doing an intro to color management. So really, color management is, the reason you do color management is because it is a technical way to turn your log footage into footage that looks good on screen without having to guess. Okay, that's the short answer. For Fusion, it's really important to do color management because if you don't, then you're kind of guessing, right? So if I switch over to Fusion right now, I'm working with the log image. And so if I were going to add something here, it's really hard to tell if that's going to look good after I color correct. One thing that I can do these days is I can go to media out and switch to color, and that's going to load that whatever's happening in the color page here. But it's still essentially doing color management because I'm looking at this color managed image at the end while I'm working before it. Okay, so if I were going to add something to this, some fog or whatever, then I can take this and add this fog in here and make it look good, when really, if I take this color off, I have no idea if that looks good. It's impossible to tell if this looks good when I'm not looking at it with the transform on it, right? So when I have the color on it, it's like, oh yeah, that looks good. When I don't have it on, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people, especially if they go to like After Effects, is they'll color correct it first, and then they'll go in and do their compositing and stuff on a Rec. 709 image. Don't do that, because what you're doing is throwing away a whole lot of information before you do a very intense color intense operation. You know, it's like scaling down an image before you go and bring it into Photoshop. Like, it's not really a great idea, you know, even though it works, it's fine. So what we do with this is we either look at this with the color grade on in Resolve 20, or we use project level color management, or we set a CST in here to give us a color transform, and we always work looking through that color transform, even though we're adjusting the image before the color transform. We're always adjusting the image before the color transform from camera space to or from a wider gamut to Rec. 709. Okay. Now, what happens in Fusion, actually, when we switch this to YRGB color manage, what actually happens is it takes this image and it converts it to linear, which we could get into, but it's a huge thing, right? Linear, this converts this to DaVinci wide gamut linear if you have your settings set that way. And it basically puts it into compositing mode, the highest quality compositing mode you can do. And all of that happens here. And then it switches from that high quality, big color space and all of that stuff, the highest quality stuff you can do. And then it puts it back down into Rec. 709, which is a small color space, but it looks good on screen. And again, you always look at it through that color transform so that you know what the heck things are actually going to look like when you are done. This is one of the major reasons why I would recommend doing your VFX in Fusion, is because all the color management is built in, rather than going to After Effects, where who knows if it's right. And you might be able to, I don't know, color management is slightly better now in After Effects, but it's still kind of the Wild West. So yeah. The practice footage from your site, couldn't find it. It's linked in a bunch of YouTube videos. And so if you look at some of my YouTube videos, there's practice projects all over. That would be helpful. I use AI to make me LUTs because I'm bad at color grading. Okay. If you're, no shade on that. If your image looks good and you like it, that's great. No, I don't use any encoder plugins. 10-bit edit with LUTs is exported to an 8-bit format like H.264. Do you lose a lot of color fidelity? Hex yeah. Hex yeah. Should not do that. Don't do it. I mean, well, you have to render, like to eventually render. But I would not do that like to send to After Effects or something. The advantages and disadvantages of using Fusion Studio versus Fusion within Resolve. I'm about to give you a hot take here. You guys ready for a hot take? I have not found a reason to use Fusion Studio. I know there are some people that will disagree with me. People that do really, really high-end VFX and have 10,000 nodes would probably swear by Fusion Studio. I have not once went into Fusion Studio and was like, oh, wow, yeah, this is way better. Every time that I've done that, it has been worse in general because it doesn't have all the built-in awesome plugins and open effects that Resolve has. And you have to round trip it, which is part of the reason I like Fusion anyway. There is supposedly a performance difference. I've never seen that. I've never experienced the performance difference. I cannot get it to perform better in Fusion Studio than Resolve. Supposedly, technically, there is a difference. I've never seen a big difference. So I wouldn't, in my experience, and I've used Fusion a crap ton, done it for a lot of stuff. I don't have Fusion Studio. I use Resolve. Hopefully that's helpful. Explain NVIDIA settings to help with 3D rendering. I have a T600 NVIDIA card and sometimes it works or don't. I don't really know how to help with that. I pretty much just, you just want to make sure that it sees your card, which I think is up here. Preferences, memory and GPU. Make sure that this stuff is set right and then it knows your card and that you have your neural engines optimized and that you have your GPU drivers up to date. I don't think there's anything else to mess with really. There might be like 3D settings in your system or something, which I haven't dug into. I'd really love to see project breakdowns from importing affinity layers and animating in Fusion, especially connected to topography and Fusion keyframing. Yeah. We do have a little bit of that in our like practice projects course. We do have some of that kind of stuff that we get into. If you're looking for some more advanced kind of intense stuff, Practice Projects Volume 1 is really great. Dives into a bunch of stuff kind of like that. Can we animate PNG characters in Fusion like a puppet tool in AE? There isn't a puppet tool. There's one called Warper that sort of works like a puppet tool. It's not the same. It's not as good. I haven't found anything really great for that. I would love that because the puppet tool is great and I would love a better puppet tool in Fusion, but it just doesn't have it. There might be plugins. I don't know. Somebody should make one. Youngest video you've ever met? My son. Dude is crazy. He recorded himself playing Fortnite a couple days ago and just with screen recording on his iPad and then is editing and putting that out on YouTube. Just making YouTube videos, going and chopping it in iMovie. Kid's a beast. Yeah, you can animate stuff in Fusion. We made a whole cartoon in Fusion. I don't know if you've seen that. But we didn't use any puppet tool stuff. It was all basically just essentially parenting layers to, it's like paper doll animation, like moving things with transforms. What's your favorite shortcut that you've set for yourself? For editing, for adjusting clips in the timeline, biggest things I do are, so if you have an image, if you have a shot like this and you want to cut this part like this and then move it down like this, the keyboard shortcut for that is Control Shift left bracket, which I've mapped to Q. And so it just chops this up and then moves it over there like that. Okay. That is called ripple trim start, I think, to playhead, something like that. And this is ripple trim end. And so you can really quickly go through and make stuff shorter. Like, oh, I want this to start right here, Q, and then I want it to end right here before he goes down. So W, and you can go through and trim stuff really, really quickly this way. And this is like the key to editing quickly, to really trimming down a lot of footage. Because I mean, you can just go through so quick. The other one would be splitting at playhead, which is by default, it's Control / like that. And that'll just split that at playhead. What I'll often do is use the playhead as kind of like to aim, and then I'll split it, and I actually have mine mapped to S. So I'll just split it like this. So I can just split this real quick, and then I can trim it with Q and W, and I can really quickly go through and trim stuff and really make this a shorter edit. That's the way. That, if you get good at that, literally those two shortcuts, you can edit twice as fast as anybody who doesn't use those shortcuts. That's the big deal. Do you use Speed Editor or Tour Neo? No. I like the Speed Editor, but I haven't had a chance to, I haven't had a reason to really dive into it a lot. If you do lots and lots of videos, if you edit a video a day for various things, especially if it's a bunch of clips laid out here on the same timeline like this, like if it's just a lot of that, Speed Editor is probably pretty great because of the dial. The dial is like 90% of why Speed Editor is good. If they just made the dial, you could probably just do that. What's the difference with Control B and Control /? I don't know. I've been asking that for many years. I don't know the difference. Might be the same thing. It's what it probably is it's probably a leftover thing from having two different, like from when Resolve was just a color app. There was probably a way to split a clip, and then the other one was Razor or something. There's a lot of stuff like that kind of left over from just Resolve evolving. It's probably that. It's probably that. I've set it to S. By default, it's Control /. Talk a lot in my videos, but at different volumes. Should I use the silence remover and normalize to 9 decibels independently? You could do that. I would probably put a like a multi-band compressor or use the dynamics like here. Oops, actually, yeah, sorry, it's in here with our mixer. I would use this right here, this dynamics. Switch this to something like dialogue compression or something. What this does is it takes your louder things and it brings them down. And then this makeup pushes the whole signal up. So you're basically making the whole signal louder. And then with this part right here with the ratio, you're taking the really loud stuff and pushing it down. And so the dynamic range of your voice is compressed. That's why it's called a compressor, right? So it compresses things down. You push up the whole thing. Some version of this is good for anything, pretty much any dialogue ever is some version of it, but especially for YouTube, internet, stuff that people might watch on their phone or on their laptop with terrible speakers or anything, that kind of thing. You want some version of that. All of my videos have some kind of compressor on it. My voice right now has a compressor on it that's being applied live through my interface. Oh boy, I gotta go. It's lunch o'clock. All right. So, I know we got lots of other questions that I just can't get to, guys. Seeing if there's anything that's really quick to get to. I don't think so. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for showing up, for hanging with me today. I hope this has been helpful. And yeah, if you have any other questions or anything, feel free to comment on this video and we'll see if we can get to it. As well as if you have any of our courses, you get access to our school community, which is really sweet. It's a whole community on of our students. Also, I forgot to mention, if you don't know, we're doing ResolveCon. ResolveCon is an amazing live thing. If you like live things like this, we get all kinds of really amazing people to come and do presentations here. 2 days for free, but then we have 2 days that are VIP that, oh baby, you do not get access to unless you get the VIP tickets. VIP tickets are on sale right now, and they are less than they are ever going to be. Our sale ends Monday, I believe. So please make sure that you get those because we only have limited spaces. They're filling up quick, and I don't want you to miss it. There's 2 full days of more awesomeness. So make sure you get those. There's a link. There'll be a link. I think there's a link. There might be one under this video, but my last video is a VIP tickets are available now video. That's how you get there. Just go to resolvecon.com though. Resolvecon.com. And it'll tell you all about it. But make sure you get that VIP because it's going to be more expensive next week. And we might not even be able to sell it. We might sell out. And we're limiting the spaces because it's sort of an interactive thing. And we don't want to be interacting with lots and lots of people because it's scattered and terrible. Okay? Okay. I'm going to go now. Go get your VIP tickets if you haven't. And yeah, I just think you're great. Okay? Okay, bye. Bye now. Bye. See you later. Hey, that's fun. What a nice time. Yeah. It says it's loading, but it's not. Nothing's loading anymore.